Hi, my name's Potsklan, and I'm a cybersecurity engineer. As a cybersecurity engineer, the title itself is very wide, I would say. In my job today, I work as an endpoint security engineer, so I'm working with endpoints. And endpoints are all kinds of devices, mobiles, servers, laptops, what have you. I monitor, I maintain, I patch, and upgrade all those machines, usually in waves, so that we don't take anything down. I work for a major media company, and I like to call myself the nerd in the closet that makes sure that everyone is able to do their job. I help maintain all our endpoint devices, and earlier at that same company, I also used to do security architecture work. Mainly, I would look at architecture diagrams, data flow diagrams, and try to figure out where does security come into play? How is the data moving? Is it moving securely? Incident response work is very different than anything else I've done. I've mainly worked in application security, penetration testing, and vulnerability management before my current job. You know, asking myself questions like, what's going on? Since when has this been happening? What is causing the outages? What host machines are being affected? Those kinds of questions help guide me to figure out what are next steps and how we could contain the issue. Some different tools I use Python every day as just for scripting, working with different APIs to be able to better connect to our tools. For instance, we're onboarding a tool right now where it's not working exactly the way we want it to work, so we're just using the API to create different integrations so that it could work better for us. I've always been very lucky because I've always worked in a hybrid environment. Right now, I'm more remote than ever, but I have found that it's really important before I start my workday to go outside for a period of time, usually go for a run, work out. I feel like my days that I don't start going outside, I get really dreary by midday and it's hard to focus. And a lot of my job is a lot of critical thinking. It's a lot of reaction. It's a lot of analysis. So if I'm not able to think clearly, I really can't do my job as effectively as possible. What my day looks like right now is I log in, I make sure that I check my dashboards, make sure that there's no outages, I check for any alerts. I would say my day really varies depending on if there's an incident. If there's an incident, all bets are off. I need to go chase this down, and it could either ruin my day or ruin my week, depending on how quickly I could resolve the issue. I credit my parents for everything. They put me in computer class when I was a kid in the 90s. I loved the computer. I remember my parents ordering a computer and it came in a box with cow print. I remember sitting on the chair with my dad as he was putting it together. I loved it. I felt like it was really intuitive, and my parents were really shocked by how quickly I was able to use it, especially in comparison to them. Only recently, my mom was going through old papers and found like a report card from the computer class going, "Chloe loves computers," which is just so funny, considering that was my first step into going into this career. For some reason, I didn't consider having a career in information technology until much later. I went to undergrad business school, and even before going to business school, I thought I was going to study political science or something of that sort. But this information systems major seems really practical. It seems that a lot of business today is enabled by information technology, computers. This makes sense. And the major really opened up my eyes to a bunch of different career paths, and I eventually landed at Deloitte doing cybersecurity consulting. I didn't really know what consulting was. I really didn't know what cybersecurity was. I remember reading the job description and being like, okay, that sounds really cool. War games, that sounds cool. Vulnerability management, that sounds great. Stopping hackers, okay, that's definitely something that sounds similar enough to information systems and information technology, but I don't really know a lot about it. And that internship was really a crash course on what is cybersecurity, what's cyber risk, what's consulting, and also just gave me a really good taste of all these different subdomains within cybersecurity. I was at Deloitte for several years, a great experience. It really trained me to be very comfortable with learning really quickly. I'd be thrown in a situation, a call, a meeting, and they'd be like, okay, you're the expert, explain this to us. And a lot of the cases, I wasn't the expert. A lot of the cases, I got up to speed as much as possible right before the call, but being able to sound confident, also being confident with saying, I don't really know that answer, let me circle back to you. So consulting taught me a lot. I love cybersecurity. I think it's a really exciting industry. There's a lot to learn. It's constantly changing. I feel like every single year I've been in cyber, there's been a ton of different tools that have come out. When it comes to keeping up to date with my industry, I would say there's a lot more resources today than there were 5-10 years ago or when I was first starting. I use LinkedIn, I use a ton of different newsletters. There's a ton of subject matter experts that I follow online where I see what they're talking about, and obviously a lot of the discourse recently has been about AI. It's a very interesting tension between thinking about how you could use AI as a white hat, as someone who wants to prevent any incidents versus folks who want to use it maliciously. And there's a tension for sure, but there's a lot of interesting conversation about how we could get better up to speed, because as much as malicious actors have access to these tools, so do we. And it's just up to us to figure out how to best enable the use of it. What I've found challenging in my job is it is just a lot of information. It's constantly changing, but what inspires me is community. I found a lot of different communities of different Latinos in tech, women in tech that really have helped me expand my network, lean on to them if I have any questions. For instance, I was giving a talk earlier this summer and I couldn't get something to work. I was troubleshooting, and I eventually reached out to someone in my community. I was like, hey, can you jump on a call and help me figure this out? It's not working. I don't understand why it's working. And they got on calls with me for hours, and we both tried to troubleshoot it. And for that, I'm really grateful that I know people who are willing to help me out when I can't figure out problems myself. I would say one of the most interesting things about cybersecurity is there's not a really like traditional path here. Everyone's come in very different ways, especially folks who've been in the industry for longer. A lot of people have come from help desk, systems administration, but I've also talked to people who pivoted into cybersecurity from being an archaeologist and a librarian, which I think is really fascinating. It's been at times frustrating being a woman in technology. I've been usually the most junior person in the room for a lot of my career, and usually also the most junior and the only woman in the room throughout my career. When I was younger, I was definitely more intimidated by it, but now it's just something I know and move on. And I feel really passionately about mentoring other women. Anytime anyone reaches out to me, I go out of my way to talk to them, give them as many resources as possible. Anytime I get this question concerning where I see myself in the future, I always try to confidently say that I hope to be a CISO someday. So a CISO is a Chief Information Security Officer. They sit in part of the C-suite and they specialize in cybersecurity. And they're usually making a ton of different executive decisions when it comes to if there's any incidents, if there's any PR concerns and what have you. But anytime I say that to any executive or someone in a leadership role, they're like, are you crazy? It's a really challenging role. And there's a lot of pressures to it, but it's something I do aspire to. I still want to learn more. I still am very interested in learning about reverse engineering and malware analysis and getting more into that side of things. So I love following my curiosity, and it's something I always tell people, see where it leads you, because you'll be pleasantly surprised.